Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Setala,
And I'm Dr. K.
and we're here with an episode of Holistic Highlights. So we're here today with a topic that can cause a lot of anxiety for people, but that makes it even more important that we talk to it. I know, Dr. K, you've talked about this needing to be a topic from all the way back in spring when there's been a lot of fear around COVID and all that. Why don't you start us off while I go do my little Facebook thing, making all these things public and sharing it?
I'm not even sure what episode that was, but I made the statement of at what point do we fear so much that we stop living? Because that's what was happening with COVID. I think it's maybe died down a little bit, but I'm sure there is still some folks hanging around that are quite worried and wearing their masks and really, really concerned that they might die because of COVID, because they're claiming this condition is so deadly. Well, everybody would be dropping off like flies if that was the case. So, what we wanted to talk about today is just all around this death and dying situation. But those two words, death and dying, I'm not even sure what the adjective would be to use for that. Hank, if you have a thought, I'm drawing
No,
a
well,
blank, but they're
I
heavy.
think death and dying is something that for a lot of people, until they're way later on in years, it's really out of sight, out of mind. When we're kids, we think we're indestructible, and a lot of times that's when like midlife crises happen. When people like start to realize, like, oh, like they have friends dying around them, they have their family dying around them, and they're like, wow, this is something that is actually part of my reality. But because of COVID, it has shifted everybody to thinking about it at way earlier timeframes, and all the better, because it's stuff that there doesn't need to be a lot of fear or anxiety around. It's just another part of existence. But it definitely can be unnerving for people when you're looking at that and you really don't know what does lie beyond, like what,
Mm-hmm. It's the
depending on belief
uncertainty.
systems. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
uncertainty. This is one thing that we are, I don't know if we're born with necessarily. We're born with really no fears aside from the fear of falling. That is an innate fear that we are born with. It's almost like part of our computer program, our human mind. And I think part of dying is a little bit of that because of its uncertainty. How painful is it going to be? What's going to happen? And there's a lot of clients that I have that, not a lot, a handful that are a little older and a little concerned about losing control. They still have their mind, but what lies beyond? And I think the first thing to really remember is we are not the body, we are not the soul, or we are not the thoughts, we are not the emotions, we are the soul. The soul has always been, is, and will always be. So we really don't die. And when we speak of death and dying, if you think of that word or hold it in your hand and say it, it's really heavy. I like to use the word transition versus
Yeah.
death and dying. So if we can just change that concept, it can make it a little bit lighter because we really don't die. There's always turnover, there's always transition, and we are dying really every day. Parts of our cells die. We undergo a process called of cellular uh, dying, which is called cellular apoptosis, which the cells pop and actually die. And they're cleaned
That
up
does not sound
and
fun at all. Cellular
well, I'm
what?
sorry, it happens. Apoptosis.
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 I'm glad you're here to pronounce all these things.
Your red blood cells actually die every 120 days and they are regenerate, new cells are made. Your bone marrow makes new cells. So this process of dying is happening every single day. And we die every day. We go through stages. Think of you are never going to be one again. You are never going to be two again. We've shed and hypothetically kind of died from those stages. So life and death are actually very much intertwined, and we we our fear of death actually keeps us alive in a way. So it's this cyclical thing that starts happening. And the biggest line I say, we're not going to get out of here alive, no matter what you do. At some point, you're going to leave the planet. But our brains get in, somewhere we are taught, as usually when we're younger, that death is just such a horrible thing. It's so painful. It really isn't. There's a great book by Anita Morjani that's called, the title is Dying to Be Me. If anybody hasn't read that, has read that. Have you read that book,
I
Hank?
haven't, but I love the title because it goes into, it really comes into like people aren't really being their true authentic self. And people are really, that's what everyone is yearning for, is the ability to step in and express their own unique voice in this world. They're dying to be them. The old them has to die so that you them can come out and
Yeah,
shine.
I'll message you that one. Her last name is spelled, I think it's Morja. Morjani. It's Dying to Be Me. You might
Well,
even
we
need
may
to
just
look that
have to
up.
start like a book club stream or something. And
Cool.
there was another book that the one that I had recommended we talked about the other day is called "Home with God: A Life That Never Ends" by Neil Donald Walsh, and he calls the day of death the continuation day. That he's recognizing that it's not that you don't exist; it's merely we're shifting and changing forms.
Correct. That's all. So I tell people, you shed this thing. That's all. But we are, there's so many angles around this. But if you have a chance to read the book, she has cancer for a really long time. They pretty much tell her she's not going to live. She actually crosses to the other side and she's pulled back. So she has this whole experience where she has crossed to the other side, has the experience of oneness and being able to see things from that perspective, and is being told to come back. And then she shares that, and how there is only oneness on the other side. There is no pain. There's no,
Hmm.
you see everything from every angle from years on. You just see things from a totally different perspective. So that might be a good book for somebody to read who's concerned or worried. But I think the biggest thing around this is attachment. And I see so much of that, have seen it for years. There's so much attachment to our pets, to other people, to family members, to situations. It's the attachment to hang on to this world as if we are going to be here forever and ever. Can you imagine if we all lived forever and ever? Dinosaurs, animals, mosquitoes, bugs, cockroaches. Can you imagine if we never died? We'd be
It would be
extremely
interesting.
overpopulated. uh, it's a natural process, and the best thing that I can recommend is start to see, if you're afraid of this whole thing, start to see this as it's a natural process. And I think we kind of all know that in the back of our heads, but maybe when it comes down to that last moment and you're fearing of the transition. But if you really spend the time, and this may take some time, to really embody the fact that you are a soul, and it's not going to be a painful process. It doesn't have to be a painful process. It doesn't have to be scary, and to release and let go of the attachment to your physical being. I think we're also in attachment of wanting things to be a certain way. So grandma should die when she's 99 or 100, in her bed at home and while she's asleep. We don't have those choices. It's whatever the big guy upstairs or the, however you view that, whatever your religion is, decides that. That's not necessarily our
Well,
choice.
and I do think on
So
some level we do decide that. That's one of the things in Neil's book
the
is like,
soul decides.
right, and it may not be how you consciously would like to go, but there may
Right.
be like a little path or a soul plan, if you will. And ironically, in a poll, I found this very interesting. It was a thing on NPR that when people were asked if you had to pick a way to go, like what would you pick? And a lot of people picked cancer. The reason being is that you see it coming for so long, and you have
Yeah.
time to
To prepare.
to prepare, and you have time to talk to your family, friends, clean house, because that's one of the things I think that gets us with like sudden traumatic deaths is like all the undone things that are like hooches or heavinesses between us and other family members and things like that. A lot of that stuff is just left unattended to, and if you do see it coming, then you can work on that. But what would it be like if, in preparation for continuing on to whatever the next thing is for you, getting rid or enlightening yourself as much as possible before that happens, and dealing with all the things that are sticking us energetically that are heavy. And then when we do have that continuation day or whatever you like to call it, being able to pick something or do something else that's of a much higher vibration in nature.
I agree. And that's interesting that you bring that up, because I kind of state this in a way of cancer sometimes in these long-term, those types of terminal conditions, actually a little bit of a gift depending on how you see it, because you get the opportunity to prepare, you get to live life to the fullest, and you can kind of squeeze in those things that you want. Although we should be doing that every day, but this is that light underneath
Well,
your butt that's like, come on, live
and
life.
sometimes when people start really living their life, and like you were saying, people are dying to be them. Some people, when faced with the mortality and they really shift, you know what, I'm going to live life to the fullest, and they really step into that flow. How many people have had miraculous recoveries that thought they were terminal, that all of a sudden just unexplainably turn and change? Maybe it's
Yeah.
because when you, I think that some things are like your soul came in with, I like to call it more like a plot, like just like a musical has a plot and a screen as script or whatnot, and you came in for certain things, but you don't have to stay on script. You can do whatever you want. If you go too far off script, the soul's like, well, what am I doing here? I'm not doing anything that I really came to do. I'm going to check out. And then you start dying, and because you're dying to be you. And when, if you can step back onto that, that's when miraculous things can happen and miracles can happen. So how much of that is really us being incongruent with really walking and being our own unique voice in the world?
Yeah, I think that's probably the two biggest takeaways here today, even though I'm doing this early, but live your life now and don't be in. So people are either really in fear and so they hang on, or you have the opportunity to live your life to the fullest. Because even with COVID, I'm not saying don't be careful and go out and kiss everybody and just who cares. But at the same time, there are people that were so fearful that they wouldn't leave their home. Maybe some still don't leave their home. I have a friend that I think
Oh,
she is very concerned, but at what point is COVID going to get you? I don't know. I don't have the answer
well,
to that, but
and there's in nursing homes and things. I wrote an article, I forget where, so I haven't fact checked this, but they were finding a correlation that because they weren't allowing visitations in nursing facilities, like residents there that had frequent interaction with people coming to visit from family members, that all of a sudden didn't. They very quickly declined, and like
yeah,
more dementia, Alzheimer's, and things like that. So
absolutely.
without that connection and that ability to have these connections and things, that isolation, if you're anyway, it's not for everyone being able to just be isolated like that. It's important. We're social creatures in a way. So what could we do to not lose that and still be responsible with the virus and the current pandemic? Would be the question.
That's a challenging topic, really,
Maybe that's a whole
because
topic for a separate stream, maybe.
it's just you're either going to get COVID and you're going to survive it, or you're going to get COVID and you're going to pass. And then what common question that or comment that I hear all the time is, well, if the doctor would have just caught this earlier, well, if we would have just known earlier, well, if I wouldn't have just gone to that party and got COVID. Everything is predetermined already. And if this was planned and it was time for your transition, it was time for your transition. There is no ifs, ands, or buts, and it should have been a different way. And if we would have caught this earlier, and if it wasn't missed at the doctor's office 5 years ago, he dismissed me, then, maybe grandma would still be alive today. You gotta kind of see this as, if you start to understand that everything has a predetermination in some sense, we are going to leave this planet at some point, and that time has been designated already. Whether it's 92, whether it's 50, whether it's 25, whether it's a baby, there's just that soul's time is predetermined for what it's designed to do here. So if we can let go of that attachment, then life becomes so much freer and so much easier.
Well, one
So
fun thing on predetermined stuff, being that it is the ever-present moment of now, and you're an infinite being, at any point in time, you can go back and rewrite your script. So though things are predetermined, they're also not, depending on if you can go to
it's
the
free
space where you
will.
can actually change that. But one of the things that what I hear with that too is we oftentimes are pointing outside of ourselves, but all these things are really from the choices that we made or haven't made. And that then when we get the result of those choices, we choose to put the blame outside of ourselves, saying, well, I chose not to go to the doctor. And in the States, it's especially hard. In Germany, my wife is German, so I have a little bit of an inside view on that culture. Healthcare is 100% free. And the second anybody's sick, they're going to the doctor. And here, a lot of people don't have health care, or we're taught with the men, we've got to be tough. Like, I'm not going to the doctor unless I'm dying. Well, if you wait till you're dying, it might be too late. So like we just have this tendency here to either not go in as frequently, because we also have this corporate efficiency mindset where the corporations say, how can I get the most out of these people and put the least into them? And in that mindset, we feel bad if we miss work, right? Like, I got to go to work, they need me. Like they have this whole idea, and by the time we actually take the time to take care of ourselves, it's way past the time where if you had caught it early, or anything, I'm not just talking about COVID, but just illness in general, that you could have, made choices that would have gone in a different direction, and created a whole different possibility.
We have all
I'm sure
those
you see that all
choices
the
during
time.
this time frame. Yeah, these are all choices during our time frame here. But that's part of a, I think, deeper soul process, and making those choices, and you can do whatever you want once you're born here, and move on. But some questions that people sometimes ask me when we talk about energy, and we talk about soul purpose, people are like, well, how come a baby comes in here and dies so quick? That baby may have brought something to somebody's life that they didn't see before, or that baby also may have gotten an enormous amount of love. That soul got an enormous amount of love during the time that it's here. It was there to teach something, to serve some sort of purpose. And these are all really tricky subjects, because our brain, our ego, really gets in the way of a lot of these things, because we get really tangled up. We are not at the point of just surrender, and I think that's the key really with all of this, is surrendering to the divine, to the higher power, whatever that source, whatever that is for you, and living the best life and the most fulfilling life that you can here, versus sitting like this and going, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen when. That you're not dying to be you then, because there's a part of you that really wants to live, and wants to live free. So when you have these constrictions and these worries, you're not living a free life. You don't have a free mind. So that's the challenging piece.
Now the question really is, for some people watching, they may look at all what or listen to what we're saying, or watch us with what we're saying, and it's easy to sometimes conceptualize these concepts. But for someone that has never had like an experience in meditation or something like that, it's just words, and it's like
Yep.
that doesn't do much to
Jive.
shift their inner state. So the question then becomes, if you're watching this, or you're referring this to a friend who has a lot of fear around this, and they are really much in the head, and they can only think of things in concept, and they haven't had any experiences that support that there's something beyond, what
That's a
tools could
huge
people
key.
start to, because that's really where a lot of shifts will occur, because people can hear that all day, but what could they do to have an experience where they kind of see that? And that's where mediumship really started to develop over time. Spiritualism was to prove the continuity of life. Hey, I got Uncle Fred and he says blah blah blah, and they're showing that consciousness is continuous. That's how spiritualism originally got started. It wasn't about being psychic or telling the future, it was about proving the continuity of life. And it started to give people a lot of ease around knowing that their loved one passed and was still there. But some people aren't open to that either. So what could people do to maybe have an experience, is the question, where they know that there's something more?
That's a tricky question.
I know,
I
that's
don't
why I
have a
asked it.
really easy answer to that. I think reading that book would be great. I think that's a good start, and starting to study consciousness, and starting to study what we're talking about little by little. Let it seep in little by little, because this may not be a concept that just clicks with somebody. It took me a handful of years to really get to the level now that I am able to surrender more easily. Not
Right.
everybody's at that point. So
And I talk
get on
about
the
it all the time.
process.
When I first got sober, I've been over 12 years in recovery now, and I fake. They say fake it till you make it. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
doing all the fake it till you make it stuff, and it took about a year of like just doing the motions and not really buying into it. But there was still, it was seeping in. I was doing what I was told to do, and it was seeping in. And there comes a part where there's this tipping point where it just starts to and becomes easier. So it's like you're putting all this weight on one side of the scale, and it starts to shift. And once you get to a certain point, it then becomes easier, and the growth becomes way more rapid if you can just stay the course and stick with it.
I think finding some groups that do meditation would be a great start, because when you start to experience stillness in your mind, this is really all about stillness in your mind. When you can gain the stillness in your mind, you don't have all that noise and all that fear, because those are all emotions. And we generate our emotions, and we also have control over them, believe it or not. I think that's something I'm going to be teaching more of, because gaining control over the emotions, because that's so important. We have all this noise in our head. We have all this worry, anxiety, fear, frustration, resentment, anger, all these things that start happening in our heads. When we can gain control over that and we can gain stillness, it's in the stillness that you hear the answers. It's in the stillness that you feel peace. It's in the stillness that you, I think, gain advantage over this. And a lot of people do not have stillness in their minds.
And a
That's where
shout
I
out
get
to
there.
a great book. It's called The Still Small Voice Within. It is one of the books by Rishi's Metaphysical Institute located in Euclid, Ohio. The thing is, if you want the book, you got to like call them and send a check, and then they'll mail you the book. They don't have the books online. I used to sell them. I can still get them, but it's an amazing book. And then someone gave a shout out to it on like a national talk show. And to this day, they still have people reaching out to them, ordering the book, just because they find this little snippet from this news lady who had found the book, and it made such a difference in her life. But it really is a lot of tools to get in touch with that still small voice within to start getting the answers. And with meditation, just it doesn't have to be something that you work really hard on. The thing is, you set aside some time each day, even if you start with 5 minutes, that's enough to start quieting the mind. And you're putting energy flows where your attention goes. So if you tell the universe, this is important to me, I'm setting aside time, I'm prioritizing this, it's going to give you more and more opportunities to experience that silence, even when you're not meditating. So just choosing it and staying the course and being consistent with that declaration of will to the universe is going to shift to make all the difference for you to experience that. And then you'll have that moment. And I can't, only meditators will get it. And I know you know what I'm about to say here. It's, you have that moment where you just know that you know that you know. No one can take that from you. That's like a time where you come in and you just have that pure awareness of a knowing. And then you know that there's more. And all that other stuff, all that fear behind death, dying, and all that stuff simply melts away, because now you know. And then it's not a concept anymore. It is something you've experienced, and you don't have any doubts or any apprehensiveness about it anymore. No anxiety about it.
Yeah, and some people are not afraid of death. I've had friends and clients that are just, when they're at that edge and they want to go, they go. And then I've had friends and family and friends of family that have passed away and they're hanging on. They're in the hospital with
Yep.
blood pressures that you should be dead. And there's so, somewhere they're still hanging on because they need to hear something, they need to know something. The body's just miraculous as to the ability it has to hang on and how strong we are with that. So the more you can start to let this seep in, some of the things that we're saying, if you need help with it, it's like kind of like, I'm really scared, let us know. We'll work with you on that so that you can find that peace. So life comes with more ease, joy, and glory, right? How's that?
Oh yeah, that's one of the mantra of access. I have it here somewhere. Oh, there we go. All life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. 10 times
Yeah,
in the morning, 10 times at night. You say that, your life will change. Absolutely,
yeah,
especially
yeah.
if you do it while looking in a mirror, because your
Oh,
brain
yeah.
associates. Yeah, there was something, and I don't know where I thought it was from you. I learned this, but maybe not if you don't know about it. But your brain associates what it sees while you say affirmations or affirmations. So if you're actually looking at yourself in the mirror when you say these things, your brain associates you with those statements, and then it adds potency to the affirmation or the affirmation, which is
I
also
don't
why
know
it's
that I
equally
said that,
important. Don't
but
go in
that
front
makes
of the mirror and
sense.
be like, I hate myself or anything like that, because now the brain's associating, yeah, that we don't like that. And like it's self-defeating. So really, when you're looking at a mirror, like just like you would want to encourage a child, say encouraging things, and even if you're not going to say it because you think that's weird and you're don't want to be one of those crazy shaman people who talk to themselves, you can just say it in your mind if you have to. And I talk to myself way more often. Like I was working last night in the sunroom, and I'm like talking while I'm doing stuff, and my wife is like, "Do you always talk while you work?" I'm like,
I
"I
talk to
guess
myself
so."
all the time, all
I
day
didn't
long.
realize it.
I'll
Especially
admit
if I'm
it.
like working something out, it's almost as though I am just talking to work things out in my head, and it helps to vocalize things, because words have a more dense energy than thought, which is one reason why the thought, word, and deed are the recipe for true actualization and manifestation, because you can think about it. you can put form to it, but the actions are what drives it a lot more quickly. So you can manifest things just by sitting there and intending, and 10 years of intention, it manifests. Or you can intend something, make a plan about it, and then take actions towards, start getting in that rowboat and rowing. You're on one side, the universe is on the other, and you end up actualizing way more quickly because you're doing your own part. But that's a whole nother topic, which you've talked about on several of our streams. If you want to go back and for those of you who are watching, to check out some of the past streams, these are concepts that we have brought up time and time again in very different ways. So if you want some reinforcement of this, pick almost any stream. Guaranteed, some of the things that we're talking about now
We're going to be
probably are
talking about it.
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that's coming up for me, though, in funerals are interesting things.
Uh-huh.
So
People are
I'm
dying to go to them.
What? People are dying to go to them?
I know it's a bad joke, but it's Halloween, so it's okay. Of course, I got the cemetery behind me, too.
I feel naked over here. I don't have anything exciting, guys. Sorry.
Well, I think she's going to get a green screen, too.
I'm going to get a green screen because that's just way too much fun.
Isn't it? Last time I was in a forest, now I'm in a cemetery.
Yeah. Boy, Hank, you really travel. You just
get
your computer all these places. That's so exciting.
And I always have internet. It's amazing.
Funerals, I'm European, and so our funerals are extremely morbid. I don't know how they are in Germany, for
the first funeral here, my wife almost lost it because there you would never have an open casket ever. Like that concept is so foreign to her. And we were at a wake for my friend Dan who passed, and she sees that and she's just like, oh my God, like it's just not even in her realm of consciousness that you would ever have like an open casket funeral.
Really?
So it's really interesting how cultures are so different with how they
do you know why they don't have an open casket?
I've never thought to ask. I just said, okay, that's interesting.
Well, a lot of people like to, so I'm Ukrainian, and they, everybody wears black. It's very morbid. We sing extremely morbid songs to the point that I can't even stand it anymore because the tone is so low and everybody's crying, and it's just, I dread them. I come in and say hi and I leave.
Isn't it the Irish saying they say cry at a birth and rejoice at a funeral? They got it right. Like you
that's true. Yes, it is. The Irish do that. And that's how it should be. And a lot of people walk through the line, you walk through the line, you sympathize with the family and you say, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for your loss. There's no loss. You didn't own this person. So it's an interesting term that we use. So sorry for your loss. There's really no loss. And I know this is an interesting concept to people and it may sound insensitive, but think about it for a little bit. Did you own this person? Was this person like yours? We didn't lose anything, or we say, heaven gained an angel and we lost somebody here. We didn't, there's no gain or loss really. If you just sit down and think about the concept, it's just transition. That's all. It's just a transition. So some people say so-and-so passed on or passed. And that's I think a really good, great, appropriate term, and celebrate their life. They are now at a level, their soul is now at a level where it's free from all the anxiety, fear, frustration, anger, whatever they had. It provides us freedom, and the soul is now able to think from a much higher level. If souls think, we don't have some of these answers, but it's a time of celebration that this person is now going on to another level, and who knows where they'll go, but I think a lot of people make this so difficult. And then when somebody leaves, how long do you stay in a grieving process? We are human. We're going to cry. We're going to grieve. You don't necessarily have to. You have control over those emotions too. Yeah.
And to get through it more quickly too, and not savor it in a way, like a lot of people like to use that as a pity party excuse, unfortunately.
And I know a handful of folks that can years down the road, and they continue to be in this place of grief, and it's been years. How long do you choose to sit there? That grief, as we talked about in other segments, is going to work its way into the body. It's going to work its way into the heart. You're going to develop heart. I'm not saying you're going to, but you have a higher probability of developing heart conditions. So we talked about when one spouse dies, sometimes the other spouse dies very quickly within a time frame. The broken heart syndrome it has now been proven scientifically. It actually happens.
We
So if
talked
you
about it
choose,
on a
yeah,
previous stream too, where I had someone that I knew that used to run the Akron show down the Seek the Light Expo, I believe it was called, and her son passed, and she had already said, "I can't live without him," and literally within 24 hours of her son passing, she passed, and that's just like a really extreme example, and that's an example of how we look that we're so connected to the things here that what would it be like if we really understand and know that we're not really leaving the person, or with that person transitioning isn't really leaving us. In Neil's book, The Home with God, The Life That Never Ends, he gives the example that when you die, all your friends and family, an aspect of them that exists on a different level, they're greeting you. For you, there's no separation. You're with your family, you're with your friends, you're with all your soul colleagues. For the people still here that don't have that awareness yet, it feels as though we're separate. But as he says in the book, relationships never end, they just change form. But the more you
exactly.
hold on to the grief, it's almost like you have this radio of intuition. The whole body is like this amazing transmitter or receiver of energies and information. With grief, it almost like clouds the signal, it creates a static. And so if you don't work through the grief quickly, then it's much harder to just tune in. So you still have that relationship with whoever you lost. It's a matter of changing your radio a little bit so you can receive that frequency and still have that connection to them and be aware of the connection with them. And that makes it way more palatable when someone passes on, that you still know that they're there because of that connection.
Right. Absolutely. I think the biggest key is starting, if this is all new to you and this seems foreign and it seems like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. Start studying energy little by little, because that's where it all stems. When you start to understand that everything's an energy, it's not tangible, we can't grab it, we can't see it necessarily. Some people see, but it's an intangible item. So it's a bit challenging for the brain to wrap around it and understand it. But when you start studying it and letting it seep in, all these concepts are going to start making sense. And you will have such a much greater awareness that when tragedies happen, they won't affect you so much. They will start to affect you less and less and less. That's really the key to life. That's freedom. That is complete freedom, that no matter what happens to you, you are always safe, you are always protected, you are always loved, and you're never alone. And I think these are things that people really worry about: being alone, dying and their spouse dies and you're going to be all alone. You are never alone, ever. But we don't ask for help. We don't study these things to understand that the person never leaves. They shed their body, but their energy and their essence is and will continue to be and is all around you. So I think that's the biggest thing to start studying. It may not happen for you overnight. These are seeds we're planting for you to help
Yeah.
you to understand. So that's, and animals, the same thing. I will fully admit, very attached to my animals, but I took an animal communication course with Danielle McKinnon a while ago. And that's one of the biggest things that helped me so much. Animals are way more grounded than we are. They view life completely differently than we do. And they transition much more easily than we do. They actually plan their death. They know who's going to be there. They know how it's going to happen. They know who they want there, who they don't want there. If it's too hard on their human, they may choose a quicker route. When I learned that, I was like, wow. So when your pet goes, know that they've got it down way more than we do, and
Hmm.
they move through so much easier with less anxiety and pain. They just kind of like push through to the other side.
And the fun
And
too on that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were.
oh, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
have a little bit of lag with my Bluetooth earpods, so I thought there was a pause. I'm sorry, but Diane Wyman wrote a book called a Tale of Faith's Hope, I think is the title of the book. And she's an animal communicator, and she had the awareness that oftentimes animals, after they pass, they may come back into another dog or another cat and
Oh,
end up getting back to the same owner. And you'll be surprised. You may find like another animal that has surprisingly the same personality as good old Fluffy or whatever pet you might have had.
so
So
this
this
is
is
your
the fun little
perfect
words.
example of, and people will buy into that, but somehow when we get into when we transition to the human arena, it's like, oh, no, no. That may be a completely new concept. Reincarnation may be a completely new concept. You may be completely against it. Not here to change your mind, but just help you to understand that life and death are completely in cycle and in constant. They're happening constantly. There's a turnover constantly. Trees die and regrow, grass dies and regrows. Death is not something to fear,
Right.
but life does move us towards areas of fear so that we grow, so the soul grows. So don't be shocked if you have areas that keep happening to you that are scary, because somewhere you may need to be learning something, and that may be a completely new concept to people.
I'm kind of surprised we have such a quiet group today. I see you guys watching. I can see who's watching on the channels here.
Yes, if you have
But
questions, I guess
so, like, if you
this
do have
is good.
questions, comments, so maybe they're listening, they don't see when I put the banner up. But if you do have questions, comments, if you have places where it might lead us to another topic conversation that are around this, please mention in the comments. We'd like to have that feedback and go into that. Maybe I was already thinking maybe we can have a whole episode where we can even invite people on stream to tell stories that they have around death and dying. Like I have a couple, I'm going to save them for if we do this, but maybe people can come on and even like just share a story about how when they saw someone pass, how they had that feeling of silence or things of that nature. Might be a really cool episode, especially around Halloween.
I'm thinking the afterlife too. That's a second part two of this. What's the afterlife? Well, I don't know, Hank and I have a ton of answers on that, but maybe there's people that this book will be great for you, but what's part of the afterlife? What do we know about the afterlife? Some people know that, some people don't. Some people have had near death experiences and have some insight on that. That's not a frequent thing that happens, but everybody's experience around there is different. But is there questions you have around this? Is this completely out of the realm? Are we being completely crazy
We are
and
completely crazy.
like out there going, well, we are,
No, it's
but we're
probably a
not.
similar book that got me started in all of this. Someone gifted me this book, and I swear this lady must have been like a light being that manifested at my college because I never saw her in her class. I only saw her in the lunch area, and as soon as this book came to me and I gave it back to her, I never saw her again. So it's like kind of spooky like that. The but it was a book called Embraced by the Light. And she just brought it in one day. She's like, "You should read this. You're going to love this book." And I read it and it sang to my soul so much. I gave it back to her. And she said, "And if you like that book, you'll love Conversations with God." And I went home that day and got it and then like never saw the lady. So it was very auspicious, right? But this book, I
Mm.
found out later that I had a near death experience when I was very young, actually during childbirth. My heart would stop with each one of the contractions. They thought that my mother and I were both going to die during delivery.
Mm.
And then it also turned out that the placenta had disintegrated, like the fetus wasn't getting nourishment anymore, and I should have been stillborn. They don't really know how it is that I am, right? But I really, I feel like that's one reason that I have
Miracles,
this
miracles.
natural knack to intuition. And when I read that book, Embraced by the Light, it sang to my soul so much because I had had that experience, but just didn't have a conscious remembrance of it. So if that's another book people can start with, Embraced by the Light, but just to give you that one little for my own personal experience, that's why all through my life I've just had this natural ease around anything like that because I think I just got re-resonated with that stillness at a very very young age.
I
And
think,
Maureen really likes the idea for the having people on and sharing stories. We'll see how many people
yeah,
come forth with that.
that would
Oh,
be cool. I don't know anybody off the top of my head that it
uh,
had, or if I did, it was in
well, I
somewhere
have
patient long ago.
a lot of medium friends from Lilydale, so I will
Okay.
maybe I can get a
Yeah,
couple
maybe somebody would
Lilydale
want to
folks because I know
give
Elaine
us.
Thomas. Oh, if she would come on, I bet you we could have a whole episode just with Elaine on this if she's free available. If you don't know Elaine Thomas, she's the foundational pastor at Fellowships of the Spirit. I went through their 2-year program for healing and prophecy. She's absolutely amazing. Now, Mark, he had to get us with a one good little comedian thing here. Well, I have the perfect body in the afterlife. If you go by Neil's work, it is whatever you choose. If you think that there's nothing, you'll experience nothing until you choose something else. So it's really a point of view creates reality from his point of view. So maybe if you have the point of view, you have the perfect body in death, you're going to be all hooked up there. And Mary Lee says, "Blessings."
Hi,
Thanks for
Mary
tuning
Lee.
in, everyone. And
Yeah.
starting to make comments. We know you're there, but everybody's just shy today.
But maybe it's just not, maybe
It's
people are pondering. These are things to
yeah,
ponder. A new angle that you perhaps have not heard, but it's our addiction to emotions and it's our attachment to people, places, things. We are
Yep.
very attached in this life. We did a
And
whole
stepping
segment
out
on attachment.
and stepping out one more thing from that, it's our addiction and our dependence on the illusion of duality and polarity, because really oneness is all that is. We have the illusion that we have duality, so we can have all this stuff, and we are relying on that to have everything work the way it works. So we have this natural um, addiction to it, but it's really about learning to use that for the purpose it was intended, so that we can have a in the world but not of the world experience, and not get caught up in the trauma and drama, but be able to choose from a different space where you can see it for what it is, just pure experience. And then it changes everything if you can do that.
Absolutely. And I think that's where you want to, if this is a topic that's scary for you, and this is, start learning about this, start learning about energy and what it is, and gaining awareness. And then some of these things will be, you'll see they'll start to become lighter, and you're going to be like, I, yeah, that this is odd, that I'm thinking this way. It will start to jive. It will start to make sense. Everybody's journey is going to be, as it will, faster or slower as you gain awareness with this. But the afterlife is a very interesting topic. But it's really, we're so it's really attachment and hanging on to this body and the things that we have. And some people, um, who am I thinking of? Marianne. What's her
Minkowski.
last? Yeah, I've talked to her a couple times, and people get stuck here in this lifetime because they are stuck to their antique cabinet or their
Or
home,
whatever.
or these are the things I'm hearing. This is probably the afterlife topic, is maybe part two of this, how
Yeah.
souls get stuck here
Well, I did find that
between.
other background, which is like perfect for that, right? So
Yeah, okay, cool.
you'll
This
be able
is
to find that.
just, this part is, maybe the next part will be just fun. Like, we don't have all the
Yeah.
answers to the
Now
afterlife,
we
but
the doom and gloom stuff will be over, and I'll hypothesize about the unlimited possibilities in the afterlife, including Mark. Mark knows what he's going to do in the afterlife. He's going to be a stripper in the afterlife with his
oh,
body.
well, back on camera.
Yeah, back on camera. You can see how much fun you can have with the green screen. How much fun can Mark have in the afterlife, right?
Mark needs a green screen. I think he'd have
But
fun with that.
since you mentioned Marianne Winkowski, if you're watching this live and you're local to the Cleveland area, she is going to be at Goddess Elite tomorrow doing a book signing. So if you happen to be local, you can get more information, goddesselite.com. But Marianne will be there doing a social distance book signing. So there may be a cutoff to how many people they can see and stuff. So I would recommend going early. But that is going to be tomorrow.
I think I'm interested in just taking a little bit of a poll. If you all are willing to type a Y or a N, are you scared of dying? Do you have fear around death or dying alone or anything around that? Or if you don't want to comment at all, but if you want to just type a Y or an N, just like, yes, I am, no, I'm not.
Even if you're
Um,
watching on the replay, type it so we know that
doesn't
people were.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to me at all. Or hey, you guys are crazy. It's fine too. Or doesn't, none of this makes sense. But I'm just interested, whoever's watching, if you're scared, if you're really like, does this scare you? Does it scare you to lose control, move on to a different experience? So I had a couple of other thoughts, but
Oh, Anne Marie's
it
the
really
first
just,
brave soul to respond. She says she's not
no,
afraid. So we
good,
got one no.
awesome.
Good. Which is why that's the people who are still watching are probably all no's. The people who are afraid, they were like, I'm not touching that topic with a 10-foot pole. We have to
Yeah,
come
because
up
then
with
we're going to
another
single
topic
you out,
and
and we
sneak
won't.
in, we'll talk about something else. And then we'll be like, everything we just talked about also applies to death. I'm like, haha, we got you. So we'll have to like come up with a sneaky way to get to those people.
It's gaining the ability to take your hands off the wheel of life and not hang on so tight. Yes, do you need to take action in this life? Yes. Do you just sit there and let things happen? It is a state of allowance. You do have to take some action. You are a co-creator in this world, but I think the biggest thing around this is people. That's what I see most. That's what I've seen in my life most, is hanging on, just really hanging on, addicted to emotions, addicted to worry, addicted to fear. Addiction doesn't have to be to cake or sugar, we get addicted to certain emotions. We hang on to those things because they give us something,
Yeah,
and
they
that's the
love the
key.
trauma and the drama because it's exciting. Well, what would it be like to be excited about other things and not the trauma and drama? What if you were excited about possibility and ease in your life? And you could become addicted to that instead, right?
Yeah, create should I say, find a different addiction. Addiction to
Well,
something else.
yeah, and that's more fun, and then you're weaning yourself off and just being choiced. And I like using the analogy for life of, rather than the wheel, be the conductor of the symphony of the universe, if you will. And the idea with that is, in shamanism we have a mesa, and the left side of the mesa is the raw, undomesticated power of the universe. It's like the genie that if you wish for a pile of money, it can appear above your head and crush you, right? So it's like it's just unwieldy, just a raw power. And the right side is all the technical details. It's like the structure that it can fit in. And if you get caught up on either extreme, it isn't really a balance, because you either have like a technically perfect piece of music that's played, but it has no soul, or you have a free for all. So imagine like the orchestra playing and everybody's just playing their own thing with no conductor. And the magic of life, the true thing is to be able to energetically, with your intention and your choices and everything else, be able to be in the world but not of it, tapping into that raw and domesticated power, having the form and structure to put it in, and have it come out the way that you'd like. And that's where that's the fun part, and that's really being in the flow with everything and not getting too caught up with the white knuckle driving or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're really in the flow, and then you can just let it go. See, corny rhymes, I'm good at that.
But I think that's a good analogy. We are, in so many parts of our life, we are white knuckled to whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is, whether it's
I just got
food.
to get through this.
Yeah, I got to get through this. Whether it's an emotion, whether it's you're not letting go, there's something you're not letting go of. So this is not always just about death and dying. It's what can you release in your body so everything can move more slowly. Or I mean, quickly, not slowly. If you're hanging on, you're moving more. You're moving through life slowly. That's what I was trying to say. You're and we hang on to so many different things, and that's just so interesting how people hang on to different emotions, to food, to family members, to situations, to jobs. God knows I was really stuck in my job for a while. I like couldn't let go because I couldn't see beyond what could be, and I was so scared, like, then I don't have a job, then what? Well, like the saying goes, what you will not do for yourself, God will do for you. So if you don't make that decision and that's what you need to be doing, and you keep saying, I know I really need to leave my job. I kept saying that for a long time. And then finally just universe came in and yeah, pulled me out. Like, you're not doing it for yourself. We're going to do it for you. And it was not pleasant. So please guys, do it yourself.
Right. And oftentimes we're begging, we're pleading with the universe for change, but then we are not willing to row our part of the boat. With that same analogy I was doing it. So you put out to the universe you want something different, and the universe starts to row, but you're not rowing, so you just end up going in circles. So the universe says, well, I can do it on my own, but it's not going to really be the best way it could happen, but it will happen. And then that's when people, I need a new job, they get laid off like 10 years later. But in the year that you chose it, you could have picked differently and just had a different possibility. And that's where the ego comes in. Ego is edging God out. The ego only knows past data. The ego freaks out at different possibilities because it doesn't know the result. The intuitive part of you knows what's possible. You know that it's all good. You know that it's going to be okay. And those two fighting each other, because the ego will help you to rationalize not making a new choice because it knows that you survived what's already happened. So it will want you to pick choices that are going to cycle back and just have the same result you've been having. So you're really stepping into possibility. You got to tell the ego, hey, you got to, I'm thankful for your purpose in my life, but you're not running the show. I am. And then start to choose different, feel the fear and do it anyway. And fear is feeling excited and ready. We have been conditioned to mistaken excitement with fear and then not do the things that we're really yearning to do as a soul. So that's another key takeaway. We really start being your life, right? And not just living from past choices through the ego.
And know that you're going to be taken care of. So this death and dying really is all about the ego. It is not. It is not about something really horrific happening. Maybe we've associated death and dying to pain because we just, our brain, like we talked about earlier with you saying that we look in the mirror and we associate, the brain is very good at associating certain things. And maybe we associate death with pain because there's
Right.
disease and you're in a hospital and it smells terrible and you're in a gown, and it's, maybe if death was easier, and it can be, I guess, just society,
Right.
it's just not that way. People are sick. And so we fear that this is going to be painful, and is this person in pain, and are they
Right.
uncomfortable, and are they suffering? Suffering is actually a choice, believe it or not. We don't have to suffer.
Yeah. For that matter, too, if you just look at,
Sorry, my phone.
it's all
Shut
right.
that off.
I was the one last time. I had my phone down on that thing. It sounded like an earthquake from behind me. Uh, but with how many people are watching news and movies, and they're always like taking death and really making it this huge trauma. And unless if you watch some shows, like if you ever watch Ghost Whisperer, that is a great show where it shows all the healing stuff that goes along with the death and the beauty and things like that. Which, by the way, if you didn't know Marianne Minkowski, she is the real person basis for that show, and she's local to us. But a lot of it is like, how much are we buying into the projected trauma, drama, judgment and conclusion around death that is portrayed by the media and movies, because you only see the bad because bad sells more, right? You're not seeing how beautiful it is. And I'll say my death stories for the next stream, but there
Mm-hmm.
really is a lot of beauty and
Yep.
potential healing that can be involved from the passing of a loved one or for
I
yourself.
think maybe that's something that needs to change. Society, and this is what I said in the beginning when we started, I think we learn that as children that death is this horrific, uncomfortable, painful process, and nobody wants to undergo that. And so
Right.
somewhere from the time we're born to the time we get to be adults to the end, that it has to be, it's a car crash and his head went through the window, and it has to be this. That's challenging. I mean, that's part of life, but if we could gain a better understanding of that, maybe we would view death a little differently. So the concept of death has to be changed, although that's, I think, going to be challenging to do, just because a lot of people that are passing are, of some sort of illness, and they're uncomfortable. And I've witnessed a lot of that. So we've associated death and dying to something painful, gruesome,
And it doesn't have to be.
difficult, and it doesn't
And
have to be.
and I don't know if you knew this about me, but I volunteered for hospice of the Western
I didn't know
Reserve for
that.
quite some time, and I did two things for them. I did Reiki, but I would really go in and do tuning forks. I just didn't tell them. I did, did tuning forks instead, and then I sat vigil with people, and a lot of families didn't want their loved one to be by themselves when they passed, and I would go and sit with them, and almost all the time. A lot of this happened while I was actually there, but also like shortly afterwards, that people would just transition. So, like, if you wanted to volunteer for something like hospice and put yourself in a situation where you can see, what someone goes through and be there in the moment that someone passes, the silence that's present, and the you can just feel it in the air. Like there's this peace and calm that occurs. So you can go and seek out these opportunities in a safe way to experience these things. And you also get a lot of training if you, at least in the Hospice of Western Reserve's case, there's like a good week plus training that you go through, and they give you a lot of tools even around death and dying, which was invaluable for me too. Even though I was already okay with the whole concept of death, it gave me a lot of tools to be able to work with other people going through it. So it's just throwing it out there. No matter where you are, there may be organizations like that you might be able to get involved in to give yourself a little peace of mind and a little bit of experience around it. Once you have the experience around it, it's not quite as intimidating.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm thinking of another book that I read in college that was actually part of our curriculum, and now I can't think of it. It's something about the grieving process by Rose Cobbler Ruth. Cobbler Ruth. What was her first name? I can't
Kobler
think of it.
Ruth.
Um, oh, it's going to come to me after the show, of course. But there's plenty of books around there. But I really think somehow when we've gotten to this life, I'm not sure why universe created death to be,
Not Ruth War, is it?
no,
No. Though this book does look interesting. Anyway.
it'll come to me. It's like on the tip of my tongue. And I don't like when that happens because I'm like, oh, where is it? Um,
But
but
last
some
call
of
for
our,
comments too, as we're about to start winding down. If you do have any comments you want to make sure we get to, I see your comedic one, Mark. I may get to it before the end. But if you have any questions or comments as we start to wrap up here, please make them now. We don't want to miss out. And I can't tell you how often it is. We stop the stream and then we see all these comments come through. So
yeah, if you
comment
need
now.
help with something around this, you're not understanding something, you have a question around it, not sure what we mean, please post so that we can clear that up for you and just make it easier. Don't be shy. We don't bite. But if death was made, I'm thinking of it this way: if we had made death and passing a celebration instead of being painful, if the universe had not made this like the way it is now, where, um, yeah, Kabla Ross, but what was the name of the book?
Well, now
Uh,
that if we have the right author, now I could probably Google it. Kyla Ross. Unless they have a lot of books.
she has a handful. Oh, it just gets, it's driving me crazy. And I don't actually have the book. I think I like threw that out a while ago after college.
So how good was it
But
really? I'm kidding.
it was a very interesting topic when we talked about it. I'm like, I can't remember the content now because I was like second year of college. But if we make death more exciting
Oh,
versus so painful, then maybe we would have a completely different view on it. I think it
um,
was Elizabeth Cobbler Ross is her first name.
or the 5 stages of grief model, was that from her?
That may be, yeah.
Because I found one that's spelled a little differently. K with the umlaut U, B L
Yes,
E R.
that might be it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all about the grieving process. But if we, I don't know why the universe created this or why it happened that we see that death is so painful. But maybe in other cultures it's completely different. This is just in the in America, maybe in other maybe other countries too, but maybe like the Indian culture, when somebody dies, maybe it's easier. Maybe they don't have all this Kubler Ross. That's it. Maybe they don't have all this drama and trauma around it like we do, like we've created. So I don't know about other cultures. I think the Indian tribe has different um, traditions around it, but we just our brains just associate death and dying like the picture that Hank has in the background. It just looks horrific, and it really isn't. You just and it's just heavy energy too. It's really hospitals are just such heavy energy. They're full of sickness and full of just black clouds, you know. And I did residency. I was not. I developed rashes and all sorts of stuff. So if you could stay out of the hospitals, that would be great. It'd be
And
much
just
easier
a
to
couple things.
write.
Well, one, we stream every Friday at 10 o'clock. Most Fridays, every once in a while, we have a trip or something like that, but we'll be on every Friday at 10. We'll definitely have a part two. And depending on when I can get some people to come on, we may have like a special episode that could be at a different time. Like if I can get Elaine Thomas, we'll be on whenever she can be on with us. We'll change it up. So keep a lookout for that. Just want to give a couple things real quick too for Dr. K. If you want to check out everything she has to offer, here is her website at one in the upper left hand corner. And I can't see it because of the little stream. What is the actual website at Dr. K?
Oh, it's www.ihmohio.com. So it's up there.
Perfect.
It popped up.
Right. And this site is still under construction, but if you go to emergenceofbeing.com/events /energy clinic, or just go to the main page, you can get to it in the menu. This is the place to sign up for the clinic that Dr. K and I do. We do it on the first and the third Monday of every month. And it's like a 15-minute mini session where I do a little bit of sound healing. She does pranic healing, and we kind of follow our intuition to see what will create the greatest possibility for folks. So if that sounds appealing to you, and we can both work on it at the same time, you can go there to sign up. And we are going to work on a way to do this virtually because we know not all of you are local. So what would it look like, and how could we do a virtual one? We're going to work that out hopefully here before too long.
Yeah, it's easy for me to do. My part's easy. It's just
Well,
everybody would need
yeah.
their little time frame, so we'd have to schedule that. But we can scheduling is not a problem. If they schedule their 15, 20-minute time and you let that person in the room at that time, then you and I can do our thing and
Yeah.
next,
Oh,
next, next.
it's
And
easy. Zoom with that. We have the waiting room and work on the person. The next person's coming in, and we just let them in when we let the first person go. It would be really easy to do with Zoom. It's just we just need to choose it. So why don't we choose it?
yeah, so if you're really stressed out, this is the place to come. If things feel overwhelming, if life's just hitting you at all angles, you know, come on in. You'll leave more aligned, you'll leave with clarity, you'll leave feeling more peaceful.
Yeah. And
So
I can
it's
say that
important.
since we started doing it, we do have people coming back again that found a great benefit the first time. So maybe we can get some testimonials from from some of those folks. I know Mark
That
would
would
have
be
been
great.
back the next time, but he started doing some cool creative stuff, so he had to miss it. And speaking of Mark, I'm going to end with his little comment, and then we'll play the little outro. But he was just wondering what antique stores in Walmart will look like in the afterlife. I hope the afterlife food tastes delicious. I'm sure it will be all
You won't
amazing
need
food.
food there, Mark.
It's going to be a different kind of food. It's going to be food for the soul. But thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you coming online. Make sure to check out the playlist on the YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe. We will see you next time.
Take care.